Simply because I watched the Arise News last night.
Is that the television or radio?
Arise television news. And what was reported was that this hallowed chamber had suspended further consideration of the tax reform bills before the Senate. The reporter even invited the governor of Nasarawa State and pointedly told the governor that now that the Senate had withdrawn, he used the word withdrawn, this tax reform bills, which Arise News described as conundrum, suggesting that they were confusing, they were problematic. What will you say, Mr. Governor? Are you happy that these bills have been withdrawn? And the governor said, I am not just happy because the bills have been withdrawn, but I'm happy because this will now give us a chance for all of us to discuss. Sir.
Arise News.
Yes, sir.
Asked the governor of Nasarawa State.
Yes.
Whether he was happy.
Yes, sir.
That the tax reform bills
have been withdrawn
by the Senate.
Yes, sir. Mr. President, what am I trying to say here? We do not move from one TV station to another. The privilege that we have is the floor of the Senate. This is where we do our deliberations. This is where we make the law. This is where we do effective representation of our people. And if you have issues to clarify, this is also the floor that we have, rather than issuing press statements. Mr. President, we just passed our votes and proceedings. We have just passed our votes and proceedings, which is a reflection of our deliberations of the previous legislative day, being yesterday. Nowhere in our votes and proceedings was it stated that we suspended further deliberations on the tax reform bill, because we did not. And I felt it would be important to place on record that this Senate did not suspend
or withdraw.
I will address that later, sir. This Senate did not suspend and does not intend to suspend deliberations, consideration of the tax reform bills. As to withdraw, Mr. President, this is simply my response. It was a misunderstanding of legislative process for anybody to have even reported that we had withdrawn the bills. The bills were executive bills transmitted to us by the executive arm of government through the office of Mr. President. It's only the executive arm that can withdraw these bills. They are not private member bills sponsored by any senator. So no senator is going to withdraw the bill. And there is no reason for these bills to be withdrawn. In the legislative process, it is normal that some people will have concern. It is normal that people will sit around those concerns and discuss. That is why, in its wisdom, this Senate, in referring this matter to the Senate Committee on Finance, gave them as much as 6 weeks. Our instruction was that deliberate, organize, public hearing, and submit your report not later than 6 weeks. It might not be up to 6 weeks, but if they choose to be up to 6 weeks, nobody will quarrel with them. 6 weeks is long enough in a country that wants progress for a consensus to be reached. For anybody who has concern to sit down and allow such concern to be addressed in a variety of public interest. And in any case, Mr. President and distinguished colleagues, we are continuing with the deliberation, with the consideration of this bill. We took all I expected the media to report yesterday, which was well reported by some sections of the media, was that the Senate at its plenary session yesterday took a further legislative action in the consideration of the bill. And what was the further legislative action that we took? From northwest of Adamu Aleros, through the north central of Abamoros, to the southeast of Ojiuzo Kalus, we drew out people, distinguished senators, from each geopolitical zone, and we constituted them into an ad hoc committee to, on our behalf, further interface. We were clear about what we were doing. The Senate Committee on Finance is in charge of public hearing, but we set up an ad hoc committee as a further legislative action to, on our behalf, interface. Even the president of the country, called on us to please, interface with the office of the Attorney General and Minister of Justice, which also we would have done in our public hearing. But even then, the executive requested for that. And we have set up an ad hoc committee to do that. So while the Finance Committee is working on its timeline, planning for the public hearing, we want this committee to also quickly engage. And the Deputy Senate President, yesterday in announcing this committee on your behalf, also said the ad hoc committee should treat this matter with urgency, with this power, that the meeting should start from today. As a matter of fact, Mr. President, the meeting started yesterday. So the essence of what I am saying is that it's important that members of public are patient with us. They understand the legislative process that we have to follow. They understand our role in the Constitution. Any attempt from any quarter to intimidate the Parliament will be undemocratic, and we will not allow ourselves to be distracted. But we will encourage consensus, we will encourage discussions, engagement at all levels. But we cannot be bullied into adopting a certain procedure. As far as we are concerned, the tax reform bills are alive in this hallowed chamber. They are receiving consideration at various levels, and we are open to discussions, to negotiations, to interface. But let it not be said anywhere that we suspended further consideration of these bills. And also it would be laughable for anybody to also think or say or report that the bills were withdrawn. Because like I said, there are executive bills that can only be withdrawn by the executive. And there's no reason to do so. Because these bills we believe are in overriding public interest, and we do everything possible to ensure that across geopolitical interests, across, political parties, across every religious interest, everybody that has concern, civil society, everybody that has concern is given a chance to contribute to the passage of these laws. I thank you, Mr. President, and I conclude by saying that the tax reform bills for us are a work in progress, and we have the next 6 weeks to do this and finalize and pass it. Thank you, Mr. President.
To elaborate on the point of order, you came under Order 42 and also the constitutional provisions. And the Constitution is the ground norm. We can't argue with the Constitution. And Order 42 says that we should not engage in debate. We should not also bring about any controversial matter. But I must say that from your explanation, it will appear that Arise Television was totally misled into thinking that the bills were suspended or withdrawn by the Senate. Because I watched that news when the governor of Nasarawa was asked, now that the bills have been withdrawn, are you happy? The National Assembly, we were all elected to do our work. And that is the work of lawmaking in the overall interest of Nigerians. We do not do our work through social media, neither do we do it through any committee or congregation of the church or of any forum or of any nature. We do our work according to our conscience in the best interest of Nigerians. And the processes of lawmaking must be further explained to the public. The moment the bills went through second reading in the Senate, it simply means that the bills are alive. the next procedure is for the Committee on Finance to commence the process of consultations and public hearings with a view to bringing recommendations back to this hallowed chamber. But in the wisdom of the Senate yesterday, we had, in a closed session, set up a committee to be headed by the minority leader before the passage of the second reading. And we said, in the event that some people are either uneducated on some aspects of the bill, or confused, or there are gray areas to be sorted out, they should interface with the necessary executive quarters, from the chairman of Federal Inland Revenue Service to the Attorney General of the Federation, and if need be, even Mr. President. That committee was an internal mechanism of the Senate, different from the Committee on Finance. And I think that was what was announced yesterday, that that committee should immediately move into work. They should move into action, since there seems to be some gray areas to be sorted out. And I want to thank distinguished Senator Abamoro, the chairman of the committee, because as soon as that announcement was made yesterday, he immediately started consultations. In fact, he has a meeting today that he has set up to enable him fast-track the process so that the chairman of the Senate Committee on Finance and members of the committee can commence public hearings either next week or as soon as practicable. Therefore, your point of order clearly explaining that the bills are alive, have not been suspended, the actions have not been suspended, the bills have not been withdrawn, and the bills have passed second reading in the Senate, and further legislative actions are taking place, including the setting up of this other committee. All those points are hereby sustained. Yes.
Point of orders.
This is Senator Zonaso. Communication. I just want to read part 6. He says it is pertinent to state that the government has nothing sinister to warrant the suggestions that the process is being rushed. And you can see we gave our committee 6 weeks, so you can't say we are rushing the process of legislation. And if 6 weeks is not enough, we will extend the time for the committee. So this is executive communication. In line with the established legislative procedure, the federal government welcomes meaningful inputs that can address whatever gray areas there may be in the bill or in the bills. In this vein, the President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, has already directed the Federal Ministry of Justice and relevant agencies and officials to work on the drafts, or who worked on the drafts, to work closely with the National Assembly with a view to ensuring that all genuine concerns are addressed before the bills are finally passed by the National Assembly. So what was done yesterday was in line with even the directive of Mr. President. The Agro Committee is working in line with the directive of the President. And it also shows that this Senate is composed of men of wisdom and foresight. Before even the President gave this directive, we had already, before we passed our second reading, set up an ad hoc committee in the event of any gray area. So if there is any governor, or any stakeholder in Nigeria, where no matter whether the person is a religious leader or a businessman that has problem with the bill, you know where to go to. Public hearing. The Senate will not be bullied. We are doing our work in the interest of Nigerians. And by the time we come out with our final position, it will reflect the yearnings and aspirations of Nigerians. And not only that, any reform that we can make, painful as the reform may be, so long as this Senate is convinced that it is in the interest of Nigerians, we will go ahead with it with a view to bringing our economy on a forward march in support of the administration. But we will not also shy away from deleting or abrogating or stopping whatever we feel is not in the public interest. But for the tax reform bills, we believe that there are too many provisions there that would definitely help Nigerians. You can't imagine what it means for businesses that earn less than 50 million not to pay tax. You can't imagine what it means for multiplicity of taxes to be abrogated. You can't imagine what it means for people who earn less than the minimum wage or even minimum wage not to pay tax. So the exemptions are such that up to 100 million Nigerians will benefit from these tax reform bills. So let's not listen to social media. Let's not listen to Arise Television, and I hope they are well guided with the explanation of the Senate leader. Yes, the Secretary also.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. My